The family photograph slipped from my fingers, landing with an accusatory thud on the marble kitchen counter. I stared at it, unable to tear my eyes away from what I had just noticed: the unmistakable resemblance between my daughter Marissa and my brother Lawrence. Same nose. Same eyes. Same dimple when they smiled. How had I never seen it before? "Daddy, are you okay?" Marissa looked up from her mathematics competition papers, her 7-year-old face the picture of innocence. The face that had won national math competitions. The face I now realized might not be of my making. "I'm fine, sweetheart," I lied, forcing a smile. "Just thinking about the Nexus meeting today. The Nexus deal. The crown jewel of my decade-long effort to build Centera Technologies from nothing into a billion-dollar enterprise. In less than 48 hours, I would sign papers for the largest tech merger this side of Silicon Valley. My life's work reaching its pinnacle. And yet all I could think about was this photograph. "Mom said you're going to be super rich after the big meeting," Marissa said, returning to her equations. "Like even richer than now." I laughed despite myself. Did she now? And what else did Mom say? Marissa shrugged without looking up. "That we might go to Europe soon. She said Uncle Lawrence knows all the best places in Paris." My blood ran cold. Stella hadn't mentioned any European vacation to me. "When did you talk about Paris with Uncle Lawrence?" I asked, keeping my voice deliberately casual. "Last weekend when Mom and I met him for ice cream. It was our secret adventure." She looked up with a mischievous smile. "Oops, I wasn't supposed to tell you that part." The penthouse felt suddenly airless despite the floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views of the city I had conquered. I loosened my tie, the silk suddenly feeling like a noose. "Nolan, darling, have you seen my Cartier bracelet?" Stella's voice floated down the curved staircase moments before she appeared, a vision in a designer dress that cost more than most people's monthly salary. My wife of 10 years. Former model turned art gallery director. The woman whose midnight absences I had attributed to her demanding career. Her eyes fell on the photograph and I watched her face carefully. There it was, the briefest flash of panic before her features smoothed into practiced nonchalance. "Why are you looking at old photos this early in the morning?" She laughed, the sound too high, too forced. "You should be preparing for your meeting with the Japanese investors." "Just reminiscing," I said, studying her. Had she always been this transparent, or was I only now beginning to see? "Lawrence looks so young here." She flinched at my brother's name. "So slight most would miss it, but I'd built a tech empire by noticing what others overlooked." "Does he?" "I hardly remember," she said, turning away too quickly. "I'm running late for the gallery. A new installation is opening tonight." "Another late evening then?" I asked, sliding the photograph into my suit pocket. "Probably. Don't wait up." She kissed Marissa on the head but gave me only a distracted wave as she gathered her things. As the private elevator doors closed behind her, I made a decision. I'd built Centera Technologies by identifying problems and solving them methodically. I would approach this the same way. I reached for my phone and scrolled to a contact I'd never thought I'd need to call. Jasper Rook, former intelligence agent turned elite private investigator. "Mr. Harris," he answered on the first ring. "How may I assist you today?" "I need complete surveillance. Phone records, movement tracking, financial history." I paused, the words bitter in my mouth. "On my wife and my brother." "Understood. May I ask what prompted this?" I looked at Marissa, now happily absorbed in her equations, blissfully unaware that her world might soon collapse. "Let's just say I've been living in an empire of illusions," I replied, "and I think it's time I learned the truth." Even as I spoke, my phone buzzed with a text from Stella. "Meeting Lawrence for lunch to discuss his gift for your birthday. Don't tell." Another lie to add to what I suspected was a decade-long collection. "Mr. Rook," I said, my resolve hardening, "how soon can you start?" Jasper Rook's office reeked of expensive leather and secrets. The man himself was a study in paradoxes, immaculately dressed yet with the weathered face of someone who had seen humanity at its worst. "I need everything," I told him, sliding a USB drive across his mahogany desk. "These are the passwords to our home security system. I want cameras, hidden ones, throughout the house. Phone taps. Email monitoring. Everything." Jasper didn't blink. "And you understand the legality issues here?" "I'm not looking to use this in court," I replied. "Not yet. I just need to know the truth." He nodded, pocketing the drive. "What about your daughter?" The question hit me like a physical blow. "Marissa stays out of this." "Completely." "Understood. But you mentioned paternity concerns." I closed my eyes briefly. "That's separate. I'll handle it myself. After leaving Jasper's office, I drove straight to a discreet medical facility where a doctor owed me a favor. One cheek swab and a hefty cash payment later, I had set the wheels in motion for the test that would confirm or destroy my world completely. Nolan-san, we are most impressed with Centara's growth projections. Mr. Takahashi, head of the Japanese investment consortium, bowed slightly over his sake. I forced myself to focus on the business lunch. The Nexus deal represented everything I had worked toward for a decade. A merger that would create the most formidable technology company in the market. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Jasper already. I excused myself. Mr. Harris, preliminary surveillance is in place. Your wife has made 3 calls to Lawrence today. 2 were deleted from her call history. My hand tightened on the phone. And? She's scheduled a meeting with him at the Astor Hotel at 4 today. The reservation was made under his name, a suite. Ice formed in my veins. Keep monitoring. I want video from the hotel. Already arranged. I returned to the table, pouring charm and business acumen into the conversation while feeling like a man standing on the deck of a sinking ship, smiling for the photographers. That evening, my parents invited us for a family dinner. Stephen and Monica Harris had built the original Harris fortune in real estate that I had eclipsed with Centara. The irony wasn't lost on me. I had spent my life trying to outdo my father, only to potentially discover he had orchestrated the ultimate betrayal. Grandpa, look what I made. Marissa proudly displayed a complex mathematical proof that would challenge many college students. My father examined it with exaggerated seriousness. Brilliant as always, my dear. But it was my mother's reaction that caught my attention, that same uneasy glance I had noticed before when looking at Marissa, a mixture of guilt and something else, fear? She gets her brains from the Harris side, my father boasted. Does she? I asked quietly, watching my mother's hands tremble slightly as she reached for her wine. The doorbell rang and moments later, Lawrence strode in, all charm and designer clothes. My brother, 2 years younger, had always been the family favorite, the artistic genius to my pragmatic business mind. Now I wondered what else he had taken that was rightfully mine. Sorry I'm late, he announced. But I have news worth waiting for. Hanover and Schmidt have made me a partner. The prestigious international architecture firm was a major coup, and the family erupted in congratulations. Champagne appeared, toasts were made. To the Harris legacy, Lawrence raised his glass, his eyes lingering too long on Stella. And to my beautiful niece, Marissa. She's always been my greatest pride. The room seemed to freeze for a millisecond. My father coughed loudly and my mother dropped her napkin. What Lawrence means, my father interjected smoothly, is that we're all proud of Marissa. But the damage was done. The look that passed between my parents confirmed everything. Later, as Stella put Marissa to bed upstairs, I slipped away from the after-dinner drinks and followed the sound of hushed voices to my father's study. He's starting to suspect, my mother whispered urgently. I saw it in his eyes today. Impossible, my father replied. We've paid for years to keep this quiet. No one would dare. Stella is getting careless. And Lawrence has always been reckless. The merger goes through next week, my father said firmly. Everything stays buried until then. Too much is at stake. I retreated silently, my suspicions transforming into cold certainty. Back in the main room, I watched Stella laugh at something Lawrence said, their bodies angled toward each other with the unconscious intimacy of lovers. That night, while she slept, I accessed Stella's private laptop using the skills that had built my tech empire. It took me less than an hour to discover a hidden folder of financial records. Monthly transfers of $25,000 from my parents to a private account in Stella's name, beginning exactly 7 years ago. The day Marissa was born. My phone vibrated with a text from Jasper. Hotel footage secured. DNA results expedited for tomorrow. You'll want to see both in person. I looked at Stella's sleeping form, so beautiful and peaceful in our bed. How expertly she had crafted this illusion of family, of love. Tomorrow I would have proof. And then I would begin planning how to dismantle the empire of lies they had built around me. Jasper's office seemed smaller today, as if the walls were closing in on the explosive evidence spread across his desk. Hotel surveillance photos, bank statements, phone records, and a single sheet of paper that had destroyed what was left of my world. 99.9%, I said, my voice hollow as I stared at the DNA results. There's no mistake? None, Jasper replied. The test was run twice to be certain. You are not Marissa's biological father. I leaned back, feeling a strange numbness spread through me. I had suspected, had seen the evidence mounting, but having scientific confirmation was different. Final. Show me the hotel footage, I commanded. Jasper clicked on his laptop and the surveillance video began to play. The Astor Hotel's luxury suite. Stella entering, checking her appearance nervously. Lawrence arriving minutes later with champagne. Their embrace far too intimate, their kisses too practiced. This isn't their first meeting, Jasper said unnecessarily. How long? I asked. I've traced regular meetings back 8 years through credit card statements and hotel registrations. But my sources suggest their relationship predates your marriage. 8 years. Before Marissa. Perhaps even before Stella and I had met. There's more, Jasper continued, sliding across a file. Your wife was dating Lawrence 3 months before she met you. Based on social media archives and witness statements, the relationship was serious. I flipped through the evidence, photos of them together looking young and in love. Then photos of Lawrence introducing Stella to me at a charity gala. I remembered that night, how instantly smitten I had been, how Lawrence had encouraged the match despite having allegedly broken up with her weeks earlier. She targeted me, I realized aloud. Lawrence introduced us deliberately. Jasper nodded grimly. Your brother was struggling financially at the time. You had just received your first major investment for Centerra. The timing is suggestive. And my parents? They've been making monthly payments to this account. He showed me bank statements for an offshore account in Stella's name. Over $2 million accumulated since Marissa's birth. The payments came from a shell company, but I traced it back to your father. My head was spinning. They paid her to pretend Marissa was mine? Why? The Harris family image, perhaps? Or leverage over you and your growing company? We're still investigating their motives. I stood and walked to the window, staring out at the city I had once felt I owned. Now I realized I had been the one owned all along, a puppet in a scheme orchestrated by my family and the woman I had loved. There's something else you need to hear, Jasper said, pressing play on an audio recording. Stella's voice filled the room. Once the Nexus deal goes through, his stock options will be worth hundreds of millions. The divorce settlement will set us up for life. Lawrence's response, when can you leave him? The day after the merger. I've already spoken to Victor about securing half of Nolan's assets. With what your parents have been paying me plus the settlement, we can disappear to Europe. Start over. I closed my eyes, letting the pain wash through me. Who's Victor? Victor Conway. The most ruthless divorce attorney in the state. He specializes in high net worth asset extraction. Jasper paused. There's one more recording you should hear. This time, Stella was speaking to someone else. A male voice I recognized as Dominic Craig, an investor who had been circling Centerra for years. The merger announcement will spike the stock by at least 40%, Stella was saying. If you buy now based on what I've told you, you stand to make millions. And you're sure Nolan won't find out you've shared this information? Stella laughed, a cold, calculating sound I had never heard from her before. He trusts me completely. The fool actually believes I love him. I whirled away from the window, suddenly energized by a cold rage. She's committing securities fraud. Insider trading. Using information she gathered from you to benefit her lover and herself, Jasper confirmed. And there's evidence Dominic has been funneling some of the profits back to her through art purchases at her gallery. What about the marriage contract? Can she really take half of Centerra? I had my team review your prenuptial agreement. There's a fidelity clause, but it requires proof of infidelity during the marriage. The fact that she conceived Marissa with Lawrence before your marriage wouldn't trigger it. I paced the room, mind racing. But the continued affair would. And the fraud. And the conspiracy. Jasper nodded. It gets worse. The payments from your parents suggest they've been complicit in this deception from the beginning. I found evidence they were in financial trouble around the time you met Stella. Her father is Winston Blake. The shipping magnate. I finished, the pieces clicking into place. My father needed capital for his real estate developments. He used my marriage to secure investment from his future in-law. Precisely. This conspiracy appears to run deeper and longer than we initially thought. I gathered the evidence files, a plan already forming. I want everything. Every meeting, every call, every text between all parties. I want to know who else is involved. What are you going to do? Jasper asked. I tucked the DNA results into my inside pocket, right over my heart. First, I'm going to secure my company. Then I'm going to consult the best counterforce to Victor Conway. And then. I paused, the full weight of betrayal hardening my resolve. I'm going to dismantle everything they've built on their lies. Starting with the fantasy that I'm the naive fool they all think I am. I sat in Eleanor Blackwell's office, widely regarded as the most formidable divorce attorney in the country. Her reputation for ruthlessness was matched only by her record of victories against men like Victor Conway. "So let me understand this correctly," she said, reviewing the files I'd provided. "Your wife has been having an affair with your brother for at least 8 years, your daughter is biologically his, your parents have been paying your wife hush money since your daughter's birth, and there's evidence of securities fraud." "That's the simplified version," I replied. Eleanor removed her glasses, fixing me with a penetrating stare. "Mr. Harris, in 25 years of handling high-profile divorces, I've never seen a conspiracy this elaborate. This isn't just about a cheating spouse, this is orchestrated familial betrayal on an extraordinary scale. I need to know how deep it goes before I make my move." She nodded. "Wise. Have you confronted any of them?" "No. They think I'm still the oblivious husband, focused on my merger." "Keep it that way," she advised. "We need to gather every piece of evidence while they're still operating openly." After leaving Eleanor's office, I received a call from Jasper. "You need to see this immediately." An hour later, I stared at the footage from my own wedding reception. The timestamp showed 8:42 p.m., during the height of the celebration. The camera had captured Stella and Lawrence slipping away down a hotel corridor, returning 2 hours later, Stella adjusting her wedding dress, Lawrence straightening his tie. "They couldn't even wait until after our wedding day," I said, my voice unnaturally calm. "There's more," Jasper said, opening his laptop. "We recovered deleted emails between Stella, Lawrence, and your parents from the year before your marriage." The emails told a sickening story. Stella discovering she was pregnant with Lawrence's child. My parents panicking about the scandal. Lawrence suggesting the solution: have Stella marry me instead. "Nolan is successful now," Lawrence had written. "He can provide for the child better than I can. And he's always been desperately lonely. Stella can make him believe he's the father." My mother's response: "If Nolan marries her, Winston Blake will certainly invest in Stephen's waterfront project. This solves both problems." Stella's cold agreement: "As long as the financial arrangements are generous, I can play the devoted wife for as long as necessary." My father had sealed the conspiracy: "We'll ensure the child is placed as primary beneficiary in the Harris Family Trust. Lawrence will always have access through the child." I leaned back, feeling physically ill. So my entire marriage was a fraud from day one. A business arrangement designed to secure my parents' financial future and give my brother access to my wealth without the responsibility. "I've also located your father's original financial records," Jasper continued. "He was weeks away from bankruptcy when you announced your engagement to Stella. The investment from Winston Blake saved him." "And what about this family trust they mentioned?" Jasper slid across another document. "I found it. Your parents created a new family trust 7 years ago, right after Marissa's birth. It bypasses you entirely, leaving the bulk of the Harris family assets directly to Marissa, with Lawrence named as her guardian in the event of your death." The implication was clear and chilling. "You think they considered?" I couldn't finish the sentence. "I flagged some concerning conversations between Lawrence and a friend with ties to criminal elements," Jasper said carefully. "Nothing explicit, but there were discussions about permanent solutions to Nolan problems should the need arise." I stood up, needing to move, to breathe. My own brother contemplated having me killed? The conversations were theoretical, but the intent was there. I laughed bitterly. "And I've been working 80-hour weeks to build a company they all plan to inherit." "There's one more thing you should see," Jasper said reluctantly. "A conversation between Stella and her friend Vanessa from last month." The recording played Stella's voice, slightly slurred from wine. "Sometimes I look at him working so hard, thinking he's building this legacy for us, and I almost feel sorry for him. But then I remember the payoff that's coming. 10 years of playing the devoted wife will be worth it when I'm finally free with Lawrence, and rich beyond belief." Her friend laughed. "Does Nolan really have no idea?" "None. He's brilliant with business but completely blind when it comes to people. He actually believes I love him." The recording ended, leaving a heavy silence in the room. "I think we have enough," I said finally. "It's time to move to the next phase." "What exactly are you planning?" Jasper asked. I walked to the window, looking out at the city skyline, the empire I had built while they had plotted around me. "They created an elaborate performance, with me as the unknowing audience," I said quietly. "Now I'm going to direct the final act. They wanted my money, my company, my life, they'll get a taste of what happens when you betray Nolan Harris. I turned back to Jasper, resolve hardening my voice. The Nexus merger celebration is in 10 days. That's when Stella plans to make her move. But I'll be ready with a surprise of my own. One they'll never forget. I arrived early at the Nexus headquarters, purposely choosing to handle this meeting alone. The Tokyo skyline glittered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the conference room, a testament to the global empire I was about to join forces with. Harris-san, we are honored by your presence. Hiroshi Tanaka, CEO of Nexus, bowed respectfully as he entered. The honor is mine, I replied, returning the gesture. As we sat down to finalize the merger terms, my phone vibrated with a message from Jasper. Urgent. Evidence of business sabotage discovered. Call immediately. I excused myself momentarily. What have you found? I asked once alone in the hallway. Your wife and brother met with Gregory Phillips from Vertex Technologies yesterday. Jasper's voice was tense. They were there for 3 hours. Ice formed in my veins. Vertex was our biggest competitor and had been trying to derail the Nexus merger for months. Was information exchanged? Confirmed. Lawrence brought architectural plans from your new R&D facility. The ones you told me were strictly confidential. And Stella provided quarterly projections that haven't been released to the public. Record everything, I instructed. I'm heading back now. I returned to the conference room with a perfect mask of calm. Tanaka-san, I apologize, but I need to postpone our final signing until tomorrow. A security matter requires my immediate attention. His eyes narrowed slightly. In Japanese business culture, last-minute changes were deeply frowned upon. I understand this is unusual, I added, but it directly affects the security of our merger. I wouldn't ask if it weren't critical. Finally he nodded. Tomorrow then. 9 a.m. 4 hours later, I sat in an unmarked vehicle across from an upscale restaurant, watching through tinted windows as Dominic Craig arrived to meet Stella. Jasper had equipped me with a directional microphone that picked up their conversation despite the bustling restaurant. The Nexus deal is practically done, Stella was saying, leaning close to Dominic. Once it's announced, Centara stock will soar. If you buy now at my price point, you stand to make millions. And what does this information cost me? Dominic asked, his hand lingering on hers. Just another painting purchased through the gallery. She smiled. And perhaps dinner at your place later. Nolan thinks I'm at a late exhibition opening. My grip tightened on the armrest as I watched her lean forward to kiss him. Not just Lawrence then. She'd been unfaithful with multiple men. Your wife has been having an affair with Craig for at least 6 months, Jasper confirmed, checking his notes. She's provided him insider information before each major Centara announcement. And what did you find on Lawrence? The architectural contract he was so proud of? It came directly from Vertex Technologies after he provided them with proprietary information about Centara's security protocols. They're paying him 3 times the market rate for what should be a standard building design. I watched as Stella laughed at something Dominic said, her hand now intimately placed on his thigh. There's something else, Jasper said, hesitating. We intercepted a text exchange between Stella and Lawrence this morning. She told him she's pregnant. The world seemed to stop. Is it true? According to medical records we accessed, yes. She had it confirmed at a private clinic last week. But the timing? He paused. The baby isn't mine, I finished. We haven't been intimate in months. She's been making excuses. Based on her visit history and the doctor's notes, the conception date aligns with Lawrence, I said flatly. Actually, the dates better match her encounters with Lawrence from 7 weeks ago. I laughed bitterly. So she's having another child with my brother while planning to divorce me and take half my company. There's more, Jasper continued. We gained access to an encrypted messaging channel. Stella, Lawrence, Dominic, and several others have been coordinating what appears to be a hostile takeover plan for Centara. Others? Who else is involved? Your parents for one. And Victor Conway. They're planning to use the divorce proceedings to freeze your assets, force a sale of your shares, and have Lawrence installed as CEO through proxy control held by Marissa's trust. I sat back, momentarily stunned by the comprehensive betrayal. My entire family, the woman I had loved, even business associates I had trusted, all conspiring not just to steal my money but to seize control of the company I had built from nothing. They won't succeed, I said quietly. What's your next move? Jasper asked. I watched Stella lean in to whisper something in Dominic's ear, both of them laughing at what was undoubtedly my expense. First, I secure the Nexus deal, but on my terms, not the ones they're expecting. Then I meet with Eleanor to implement the legal protections we discussed. I paused, a cold smile forming. And then I prepare for the celebration where they think they'll witness my final triumph as CEO, before they take it all away. What exactly are you planning? A reckoning, I replied, my voice hardening as I watched my wife kiss another man. They created this web of lies thinking I was the fly. They're about to discover I'm the spider. I turned away from the scene, my mind already racing with preparations. It's time to send out the invitations for the merger celebration. Make sure everyone on their conspiracy list receives a personal invitation from me. All of them? Won't that tip them off? No, I said with certainty. They're too confident in my ignorance. They'll just see it as one final opportunity to gloat before they spring their trap. Little did they know the trap was already closing, around them. Eleanor Blackwell's conference room had been transformed into our war headquarters. Around the table sat the team I had assembled, Eleanor herself, Jasper and his top investigators, Malcolm Reed, a financial forensics expert, Sarah Chin, a cybersecurity specialist, and Judge William Torres, retired but still highly respected in legal circles. The asset protection measures are complete, Eleanor announced. We've transferred controlling interest of Centera to the new offshore structure. If they attempt their takeover, they'll find themselves grabbing at shadows. What about Marissa? I asked, the question that had been tormenting me for days. Eleanor's expression softened slightly. The DNA results are conclusive, but you've been her father in every way that matters for 7 years. I've prepared a petition for continued custody based on the best interests of the child. No judge would hand her over to a man who participated in this level of fraud and conspiracy. I nodded, relief washing through me. Despite everything, I couldn't bear the thought of losing Marissa. The surveillance system installation is complete, Sarah reported next. Every room in your home now has hidden cameras and microphones, remotely accessible and backed up to secure servers. The smart home system has been reprogrammed to record all conversations, even when it appears to be inactive. And the financial trails? I turned to Malcolm. I've documented every payment from your parents to Stella, from Lawrence to various intermediaries, and the money flowing between Vertex and your brother's architectural firm. We've also identified offshore accounts where they've been stockpiling funds, presumably for after their coup. The evidence is overwhelming, Judge Torres confirmed. Securities fraud, conspiracy, corporate espionage, these are serious federal crimes. Once triggered, there will be no walking this back. I leaned forward. That's the point. No second chances, no negotiated settlements. They chose this path, now they'll walk it to the end. Jasper pulled up a video feed on his tablet. Stella just returned home. She's in your study. We watched as my wife rifled through my desk drawers, photographing documents with her phone. She's looking for the final merger terms, I explained. Let her find them. Sarah nodded. The decoy documents are in the third drawer as planned. What about Lawrence? I asked. Currently meeting with Victor Conway and your father at Conway's office, Jasper replied, switching the feed. They appear to be reviewing divorce strategy. I watched the silent footage of the 3 men who had plotted my downfall, laughing together over drinks. My father raised his glass in a toast that didn't require audio to interpret, to their imminent success. And the Nexus deal? Eleanor asked. Signed this morning, I confirmed. But with my modifications. The press release goes out tomorrow with deliberately vague terms that will drive Centara's stock price up exactly as they're expecting. Setting the trap, Malcolm noted with approval. What about the Marissa situation? Sarah asked carefully. How will you handle telling her? The question struck me like a physical blow. Despite all the betrayal, all the rage, all the carefully orchestrated revenge, I had been avoiding this most painful aspect. She's 7 years old, I said quietly. She doesn't need to know the biological truth yet. What she needs to know is that I love her and will always be her father, regardless of what happens between the adults in her life. Eleanor nodded approvingly. We've arranged for her to stay with my sister during the celebration. She's a child psychologist and will create a comfortable environment away from the chaos. Perfect, I agreed. I turned to the screens displaying various angles of my home, now completely wired to record every betrayal, every scheme, every whispered plot against me. On another screen, the elaborate ballroom of the Peninsula Hotel was being prepared for the merger celebration, the stage for my final act. The invitations have all been accepted, Jasper confirmed. Every conspirator will be present, exactly as you wanted. I nodded, a cold satisfaction settling over me. And the federal agents? On standby, Judge Torres confirmed. I've briefed them personally. They'll move on your signal. I stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city I had conquered through intelligence, hard work, and innovation, only to discover my personal life had been built on foundations of sand. For 10 years, I believed I had a loving wife, a supportive family, and a beautiful daughter, I said, more to myself than to the room. Now I know 2 of those 3 were complete fabrications. I turned back to face my team. But they made one critical mistake. They thought wealth was my only strength. They never understood that my real power comes from here. I tapped my temple. They may have taken 10 years of my life with their deception, but I'm about to take everything from them in return. Sarah looked at me with concern. Are you certain you want to go through with the public exposure? The media frenzy will be intense. Let it be, I replied, my voice hardening. They chose public humiliation for me as part of their endgame. It's fitting they experience it instead. I walked back to the table and picked up the seating chart for the celebration. After tomorrow night, I said, the name Harris will still stand for power and success. But only one Harris will remain standing. The peninsula's grand ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers and the flash of diamonds worn by the business elite of 3 continents. I adjusted my custom tuxedo, a glass of champagne held casually in one hand as I surveyed what would soon become a battlefield. The stock jumped 23% after the merger announcement, commented Hiroshi Tanaka, appearing at my side. Congratulations, Harris-san. Thank you for trusting my unconventional approach to finalizing our deal, I replied, exchanging a knowing look with my new business partner. Tanaka was the only outsider I had brought into my confidence, a necessary ally in reshaping the terms of our merger. Your wife looks radiant tonight, he observed as Stella made her entrance. She truly did. The emerald designer gown I had purchased for her, $50,000 of irony, accentuated her perfect figure. Her smile dazzled as she worked the room, already playing the role of the victorious soon-to-be ex-wife who would walk away with half an empire. If only she knew. My parents arrived next, my father resplendent in his tuxedo, my mother dripping with family heirlooms she would soon lose the right to wear. They embraced me with practiced warmth. Son, this is your crowning achievement, my father declared loudly enough for nearby executives to hear. The Harris legacy has never been stronger. I smiled tightly. Yes, family legacy means everything, doesn't it? My mother caught the edge in my voice, her eyes narrowing slightly. Is everything all right, Nolan? You seem tense. Just preparing for my speech, I assured her. It's going to be quite revealing. I excused myself to greet other guests, noting with satisfaction that the hidden security team was in position. The federal agents were stationed discreetly throughout the venue, dressed as waitstaff and security personnel. Judge Torres had arrived and taken his seat at the table of honor. Dominic Craig swaggered in, already half-drunk and radiating the confidence of a man who thought he was about to become very rich through insider trading. He clapped me on the shoulder. Nolan. The man of the hour. I hear congratulations are in order. Indeed they are, I replied smoothly. Though perhaps not for the reasons you might think. Before he could process my cryptic response, a stir at the entrance drew everyone's attention. Lawrence had arrived, fashionably late as always. What wasn't planned was Stella's reaction, a flash of genuine panic as she quickly excused herself from her conversation and intercepted him before he could approach me. Jasper's voice came through my hidden earpiece. We're catching their conversation on the directional mics. She's telling him you've been acting strangely, wondering if you suspect something. I smiled into my champagne. Let them worry. The fear would make the revelation all the sweeter. At precisely 8 o'clock, the dinner bell chimed. As the guests took their seats, I noted with satisfaction that every conspirator was present, arranged exactly according to my seating chart. Stella to my right, Lawrence across from me, my parents flanking him, Dominic at the same table, and Victor Conway seated just within view. The first course arrived and I rose to give the welcome speech that everyone expected. Platitudes about business success and exciting futures. Before we enjoy this magnificent dinner, I concluded, I'd like to present a special preview of Centara's newest technology. Something we've developed in partnership with Nexus that will revolutionize how we share information. I nodded to Sarah, hidden in the control room. Around the ballroom, previously concealed screens descended from the ceiling, drawing exclamations of surprise and appreciation from the guests. This is our new immersive presentation system, I explained. Rather than one central screen, it creates a 360-degree experience. Stella leaned toward me. You never mentioned this, she whispered, the first hint of uncertainty in her voice. There are many things I haven't mentioned, I replied softly. I raised my glass. A toast. To truth, which as they say will set us free. As glasses clinked around the room, I pressed the small remote in my pocket. The screens flickered to life, but instead of business projections, they displayed a familiar hotel corridor. The timestamp was visible in the corner. The date, our wedding day. The room fell silent as the footage played, Stella and Lawrence slipping away during our reception, returning hours later, disheveled and laughing. Stella's champagne glass shattered on the floor. What is this? She hissed. This? I replied calmly. This is just the beginning. I nodded again to Sarah, and the screens changed to display bank statements, the monthly payments from my parents to Stella, starting the day of Marissa's birth. You see, I continued, my voice carrying through the suddenly silent ballroom, I've been preparing a different kind of presentation tonight. One about betrayal, conspiracy, and fraud. Lawrence half rose from his seat. Nolan, you've clearly misunderstood. Have I? I cut him off, signaling Sarah again. The screens now showed the DNA test results. Marissa's paternity clearly linked to Lawrence, not me. My mother gasped audibly. My father's face drained of color. I turned to face Stella, whose beautiful features had contorted with shock and rage. Did I misunderstand this as well? I asked, loud enough for the entire stunned room to hear. Did I misunderstand that my entire marriage was a fraud from day one? That my brother is my daughter's biological father? That my own parents paid to maintain this deception for 7 years? The whispers began to ripple through the crowd of business elites, politicians, and socialites. I smiled coldly at my wife, my brother, my parents. But we're just getting started. The ballroom had descended into stunned silence, all eyes fixed on the screens displaying evidence of a decade-long betrayal. I stood in the center of the storm, finally holding the power that had been stripped from me through years of deception. Nolan, stop this immediately, my father commanded, attempting to regain control with the authoritative voice that had intimidated me since childhood. Stop. I replied, my voice amplified through the room's sound system. We've barely begun. Perhaps the business community would be interested in seeing how the respected Harris family conspired to commit securities fraud. I nodded to Sarah again, and the screens filled with recorded conversations between Lawrence and Vertex Technologies, email exchanges of confidential Centera information, and bank transfers showing payments for industrial espionage. Or maybe, I continued, they'd like to see how my wife and brother plan to use my daughter as a pawn to seize control of my company? The next set of evidence showed the complex legal scheme they had created, with Marissa's trust as the centerpiece of their takeover plan. Stella rose from her seat, her face contorted with rage beneath her perfect makeup. You're embarrassing yourself, Nolan. No one cares about your paranoid delusions. Paranoid? I smiled coldly. Let's hear what you really think of me. The screens played the recording from her lunch with Vanessa. Nolan is such a naive idiot. He actually believes I love him. Gasps rippled through the audience. The society photographers who had been invited to cover the celebration were now frantically capturing a very different kind of event. Lawrence attempted damage control, approaching me with his hands raised placatingly. Brother, you're upset. We understand. Let's discuss this privately. Like you discussed having me killed if necessary? I shot back. The screens changed to show his conversations about permanent solutions to the Nolan problem. Lawrence froze, his face ashen. From the corner of my eye, I saw Dominic Craig attempting to slip out of the ballroom. With a subtle nod to Jasper, 2 security guards blocked his exit. Leaving so soon, Dominic? I called out. Before we discuss how you traded Centera stock based on insider information provided by my wife? Information she gathered while pretending to love me? The screens displayed their text exchanges, followed by stock purchase records that precisely aligned with confidential Centera announcements. A commotion at the main entrance drew everyone's attention. Men and women in dark suits entered, their FBI jackets unmistakable. Ladies and gentlemen, I announced, I apologize for the interruption to our celebration, but it seems federal agents have business with several people in this room. The lead agent stepped forward. Stephen Harris, Monica Harris, Lawrence Harris, Stella Harris, Dominic Craig, and Victor Conway, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit securities fraud, wire fraud, and industrial espionage. Chaos erupted as the agents moved through the ballroom. My mother collapsed into her chair, my father turned an alarming shade of red as he was handcuffed, and Lawrence stood paralyzed with shock. Stella lunged at me, her perfectly manicured nails aimed at my face. You bastard. You've ruined everything. Two female agents intercepted her, restraining her arms as she continued to scream. No, Stella, I said calmly. You ruined everything when you decided that my love and trust were commodities to be exploited. As they were led away, I addressed the stunned audience. I apologize for the dramatic turn of events. What you've witnessed tonight is the unfortunate but necessary exposure of criminal activity that threatened not only my company but the integrity of the market itself. Hiroshi Tanaka stepped forward to stand beside me. Centera Technologies and Nexus remain committed to our merger, which will proceed under the leadership of Nolan Harris. The illegal activities you have witnessed were uncovered during our due diligence process and have been fully disclosed to authorities. His public support sent a clear message to the business world. This scandal would not taint the merger or Centara's future. As the agents finished processing the arrests, Judge Torres approached me. The paperwork is ready. With the evidence presented and the criminal charges filed, the emergency custody order for Marissa has been approved. Relief washed through me. Despite everything, Marissa would remain with me, the only father she had ever known. Stella, being led past us in handcuffs, heard this and fought against her restraints. She's not even your daughter. You have no right. I have every right, I replied evenly. I was there for her first steps, her first words, every nightmare and every triumph. Biology isn't what makes a parent, Stella. Love is. As they dragged her toward the exit, she made one last desperate attempt. I'll give everything back. The money, the properties, I'll withdraw any claim to Marissa. Just stop this. I stepped closer, my voice low enough that only she could hear. You never understood what family truly means. You saw it as a path to wealth and status. Now you'll have neither. Her eyes widened as the reality of her situation finally hit her. You've taken everything from me, she whispered. No, I corrected her. I've simply given you what you deserve. As they led the procession of handcuffed conspirators through the ballroom, I noticed the news crews that had gathered outside, alerted by someone to the dramatic arrests taking place at what was supposed to be a celebration. The Harris family scandal would be headline news by morning. The dynasty they had built on lies was finally destroyed. The weeks following the Peninsula Hotel spectacle passed in a blur of legal proceedings, media frenzy, and corporate damage control. I sat in the back of the federal courtroom, watching as the final sentencing phase of the expedited trial concluded. The evidence had been so overwhelming that most of the defendants had accepted plea deals rather than face the maximum penalties. The judge cleared his throat. Stella Harris, please rise. My soon-to-be ex-wife stood, her designer clothes replaced by a modest suit, her once perfect makeup now minimal, her eyes hollow. The transformation from confident socialite to disgraced defendant was stark. This court has found you guilty of securities fraud, conspiracy to commit wire fraud, and industrial espionage. These are not crimes of passion or momentary lapse in judgment, but calculated acts committed over years with full awareness of their illegality. Stella stared straight ahead, her expression unreadable. You are hereby sentenced to 15 years in federal prison, with the possibility of parole after 10 years. Additionally, you are ordered to forfeit all assets acquired during your marriage to Nolan Harris, as they were obtained through fraudulent means. She swayed slightly but remained upright. Next came Lawrence, receiving 12 years for his role in the conspiracy and permanently losing his architectural license. My father received 8 years for tax fraud and conspiracy, his real estate empire now seized by the government. My mother avoided prison through a cooperation agreement but lost everything else: her social standing, her wealth, her family name. Dominic Craig, cooperating extensively with prosecutors, received a reduced sentence of 5 years. Victor Conway was disbarred and sentenced to 3 years for his role in the conspiracy. As the proceedings concluded, Eleanor leaned over to me. It's done. The divorce is finalized as well, with the prenuptials infidelity clause fully enforced. She gets nothing. I nodded, feeling a complex mix of emotions. Not satisfaction exactly, there was too much destruction for that, but perhaps a sense of justice served, of balance restored. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed, hungry for a statement from the man who had exposed one of the most shocking conspiracies in recent business history. Mr. Harris, how does it feel to see your family sentenced to prison? Will Centera recover from the scandal? Is it true your wife faked her pregnancy to gain sympathy from the court? I paused at that last question. Yes, that particular deception was confirmed through medical records. It was one final attempt at manipulation. The revelation had been particularly ugly, Stella claiming pregnancy for strategic advantage, only to have medical records prove she had lied. It had destroyed any remaining sympathy from the public or the court. "Mr. Harris, will you be seeking custody of Marissa despite the DNA results?" My expression hardened. "Marissa is my daughter in every way that matters. The court has recognized this by granting me full legal custody. I ask that you respect her privacy during this difficult time." I pushed through the crowd toward where Jasper waited with the car. Once inside, I allowed myself a moment to decompress. "How is she?" I asked. "Marissa is doing well considering," Jasper replied. "The child psychologist says she's resilient but confused. She's been asking about her mother." I sighed. "What did you tell her?" "That her mother made some bad choices and has to face consequences, but that doesn't change how much she was loved." I nodded, grateful for his handling of the situation. "And the final piece of evidence?" Jasper handed me a folder. "Lawrence's confession. He admitted that they had planned to gradually push you out of Centera after gaining control through Marissa's trust. If you had resisted." He trailed off. "They would have arranged an accident," I finished. "Yes. The prosecutor has verified the confession with supporting evidence. It will never go to trial, but it confirms your suspicions. They weren't just after your money, they wanted you gone." I stared out the window as the city passed by. "And the Nexus merger?" "Completed successfully yesterday. Centara Nexus is now the largest technology corporation in the industry, with you as CEO and controlling shareholder. Your counter-moves with the hidden contractual provisions worked perfectly. I had secretly restructured the merger terms in those final days, creating provisions that would activate only if an attempt was made to seize control of Centera. Provisions that had effectively secured my position and neutralized the conspirators' plans. We arrived at my building where additional security had been implemented since the scandal broke. As we rode the elevator up to the penthouse, Jasper spoke again. "There's one more thing. Stella has requested to see you before being transferred to the federal facility in California." I raised an eyebrow. "For what purpose?" She wouldn't say. "Only that she needs to speak with you one last time." I considered the request as the elevator doors opened. Inside the penthouse, I could hear Marissa playing piano with her tutor. The sound brought a smile to my face, a reminder of what I was fighting for. "Arrange it," I decided. "One final conversation to close this chapter completely." Jasper nodded. "And then?" I looked toward the sound of my daughter's music. "And then we rebuilt. Not the Harris dynasty they tried to create through deception, but something new. Something built on truth." 5 years later, I stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Centara Nexus headquarters, watching the sunset paint the skyline in hues of gold and crimson. The view from the top of the world's most valuable technology company was breathtaking, but not as impressive as the journey that had brought me here. "Daddy, check this out." I turned to see 12-year-old Marissa at my desk, her fingers flying across the keyboard with remarkable speed. Her intelligence had only grown more exceptional with time, her mathematical mind now turning toward computer science with stunning results. "I finished the algorithm," she announced proudly. "It runs 42% faster than the commercial version." I moved behind her, studying the elegant code on the screen. "That's extraordinary," I said, genuinely impressed. "You've solved the efficiency problem even our senior engineers were struggling with." She beamed with pride, her smile reminiscent of the child she had been before our world exploded, but her eyes carried a wisdom beyond her years, forged in the aftermath of painful truths. We had faced those truths together. When she was 9, I had finally explained the complex reality of her biological parentage, with the help of child psychologists and counselors. It had been painful, confusing, and occasionally angry, but we had emerged stronger, our bond unbreakable not because of blood, but because of choice. "Dr. Chin called," Marissa said, closing her laptop. "She wanted to remind you about dinner tonight. She said to tell you that if you're late again, there will be serious scientific consequences." I laughed. Emma Chin had entered my life 3 years ago, a brilliant medical researcher collaborating with Centera on breakthrough biotechnology. Her intelligence, integrity, and warm heart had slowly healed wounds I thought would never close. "Tell her I wouldn't dare risk the wrath of the world's leading neurogenetic researcher," I replied, checking my watch. Ready to head home? Home was different now, a spacious but comfortable house on the coast, far from the cold opulence of the penthouse I had once shared with Stella. It was filled with laughter, research papers, science experiments, and most recently, the delighted giggles of our 1-year-old son Alexander. As we rode down in the elevator, Marissa grew contemplative. "I saw on the news that she's trying for another appeal." I didn't need to ask who she was. Yes, but it won't succeed. The evidence was too overwhelming. Do you ever? She hesitated. Miss who you thought she was? The question struck me with its perceptiveness. Sometimes I miss the illusion, I admitted. But living in truth, even painful truth, is better than living in the most beautiful lie. She nodded, processing this with the remarkable emotional intelligence that continued to amaze me. The next morning I found myself making a trip I had not made in years. The Federal Women's Correctional Facility was a 3-hour drive, its sterile visiting room a stark contrast to the luxury Stella had once considered her birthright. She entered in a standard-issue uniform, her once perfect hair now dull and streaked with premature gray. The flawless beauty that had dazzled society was gone, replaced by a gaunt hardness that spoke of years of confinement and bitterness. I didn't think you'd come, she said as she sat across from me. Your letter said it was important. She studied me, noting the changes 5 years had wrought, not just the subtle lines of age but the contentment that had replaced anger. You've remarried, she observed, glancing at my wedding band. Yes. And you're happy. It wasn't a question. I am. She looked down at her hands. They denied my appeal. Again. My lawyer says this was the last realistic chance. I nodded but offered no sympathy. I've lost everything, Nolan. My beauty, my freedom, any hope for a future when I get out. Her voice cracked slightly. I'll be almost 50 by then with a federal conviction making me unemployable. I have nothing. What do you want from me, Stella? Her eyes, once capable of melting my resolve with a single glance, now held only desperation. Help me. When I'm released. A job, money, something to start over with. You have more than you could spend in 10 lifetimes. I studied her, searching for any sign of genuine remorse. Have you ever, even once, felt sorry for what you did? Not for getting caught, not for the consequences, but for the betrayal itself. She hesitated too long, her calculated response revealing the same manipulation that had defined our relationship. I regret how things ended. I stood up. Then you still don't understand what you destroyed. Wait, she called as I turned to leave. How is she? Marissa? Thriving, I replied honestly. Brilliant, compassionate, and learning that family is built on love and trust, not biology or deception. She still hates me? She's learning to understand you. That's different from hate. Stella's facade finally cracked, a tear sliding down her cheek. And Lawrence? Still serving his sentence. Still making prison furniture instead of designing buildings. She nodded, defeat evident in every line of her body. The female inmates hate me, you know. They found out I tried to use my own daughter as a pawn. Even criminals have a code when it comes to children. I felt no satisfaction at her suffering, only a distant pity for what she had become. Goodbye, Stella. As I walked out of the prison into the sunlight, I realized I felt nothing but freedom. The past no longer held power over me. That evening, as Emma and I watched Marissa help her little brother with his first wobbly steps across our living room floor, I understood what truly mattered. Not the empire I had built, but the family we had chosen, bound by love rather than obligation or blood. A new dynasty rising from the ashes of betrayal, stronger because it was founded on truth.